You have been told you contain multiples, that you are different people in different rooms, that the self who shows up for one person bears almost no resemblance to the self who shows up for another. And you have probably spent a significant portion of your life trying to decide whether that is a gift or a pathology, whether it means you are fluid and responsive, or that somewhere underneath the shifting there is no one actually home. Welcome to Power and Myth. The word that gets used for this experience is fragmentation. We used it in our last video on the 7 archetypes, and it was the right word for what that video was examining, the feeling that your many orientations have no single coherent center, that the seer and the hermit and the exile and the shapeshifter are all speaking at once and none of them is fully you. Fragmentation captures the overwhelm of that experience. It captures the exhaustion of containing so much without a framework to hold it. But something in that framing is incomplete. And a comment left beneath that video named the incompleteness with more precision than the script itself managed. The commenter described their earliest memory, a sharp point in a doorway they had discovered by accidentally touching it. Unable to explain the danger in words that the adults around them could understand, they simply avoided the doorway, taking the longer route through the hallway every time. The adults noticed. They insisted on the direct route, and when words failed entirely, the child touched the sharp point before them and screamed. Only then did the adults understand and fix it. The commenter then wrote, fragmentation or compartmentalisation, and they drew a distinction that I want to examine properly today, because I think it is one of the most important distinctions an INFJ can make about their own psychology. Common understanding of compartmentalisation is not flattering. In mainstream psychology, it is frequently described as a defense mechanism, the mind's way of keeping incompatible beliefs or experiences separate so that the discomfort of their contradiction need not be faced. You compartmentalize your work life from your home life so that the stress of one does not contaminate the other. You compartmentalize a loss so that you can continue to function. In this framing, compartmentalization is useful, but ultimately a form of avoidance. The compartments exist because integration is too painful or too difficult. They are walls, not rooms. And when this framework is applied to the INFJ's experience of their many selves, it tends to carry that same slightly pathological flavour. You become different people in different contexts because you have not yet done the integration work. The many selves are a sign of something unresolved. The task, implicitly, is to dismantle the compartments and find the singular coherent identity underneath. This is where the surface explanation reaches its limit, because what the commenter described is not avoidance. What they described is something far more deliberate and far more sophisticated. They described entering different groups and, consciously, choosing which of their orientations was most useful for the problem at hand, not which persona was safest, not which mask would generate the least friction, which orientation carried the most relevant intelligence for the situation. The compartments they described were not walls keeping incompatible selves separate. They were rooms, each fully furnished, each inhabited with complete self-awareness, each accessible by choice rather than by compulsion. The distinction they named is this: fragmentation happens to you. Compartmentalization, at its deepest, is something you do. And the difference between the two is not the presence of multiple selves. It is the presence of the one who knows about all of them. Think about what that actually means for a moment. The commenter described growing up in a country where not conforming to the dominant social reality carried genuine danger. They learned early that different contexts required different expressions of self, not because they were dishonest, not because they lacked a center, but because the center was intelligent enough to recognize that a single, fixed presentation was not wisdom. It was rigidity. And rigidity in environments that punish difference is not integrity. It is simply a more visible target. What the surface explanation misses is that the INFJ who moves fluidly between selves is not doing so because they have no core. They are doing so because the core is sophisticated enough to operate at multiple registers simultaneously. In Jungian psychology, the shapeshifter archetype is not the archetype of deception, it is the archetype of translation. The shapeshifter moves between worlds not because they belong to none of them, but because they understand all of them. The translation is the work, and translation requires you to hold two languages at once, which means holding two selves at once, which from the outside looks like inconsistency and from the inside feels like exhausting compassionate service. Here is where it becomes difficult. Because the line between conscious compartmentalisation and unconscious fragmentation is not always clear from the inside. The commenter noted something precise without the awareness, it would be fragmentation. The self-awareness is what makes the difference, which means the question is not whether you have many selves, it is whether you know about all of them, whether there is an observer who has access to every room, who can move between them with intention rather than being swept from one to another by circumstance. This is what introverted intuition, at full capacity, actually does. An eye does not perceive from a single fixed vantage point. It perceives from underneath, from the pattern level, from the place where the surface variations resolve into a coherent structure. The INFJ who knows they are compartmentalizing is not lost in the rooms. They are standing somewhere below all the rooms, watching. The solitude that ENFJs require is not simply rest from social performance. It is the return to that lower vantage point, the place where the observer who knows about all the selves can reassemble and confirm that the centre is still intact. Shadow of this, when the self-awareness slips, is genuine fragmentation. When you have been translating between worlds for so long without returning to your own centre that you genuinely cannot locate it. When the rooms have been inhabited so thoroughly that the observer who knows about all of them has gone quiet. This is not a character flaw, it is the shapeshifter's specific wound, the exhaustion of carrying too many translations for too long without rest, without the solitude that allows NI to do its reassembling work. You are not fragmented. You are plural. And you are plural with awareness, which means your plurality is not a symptom. It is a structure. The many selves are not evidence of a missing centre. They are evidence of a centre sophisticated enough to generate appropriate responses across a vast range of human contexts. The doorway is not a metaphor. It is a description of what the INFJ mind does constantly. It perceives what others have not yet touched. It knows where the sharp thing is, and it navigates accordingly, even when it cannot yet explain how it knows. What changes when you understand this? Not the multiplicity, that will remain, but the relationship to it changes completely. Instead of asking which self is the real one, you begin asking which self this situation actually needs. Instead of experiencing the shifting as evidence of incoherence, you begin experiencing it as the shapeshifter's competence, and instead of treating the return to solitude as retreat, you begin treating it as the necessary practice of the one who must descend beneath all the rooms to confirm that the observer is still there. Which room have you been spending the most time in? And how long has it been since you found your way back to the one who knows about all of them? Tell me in the comments. This is how we do it at Power and Myth, not by simplifying what is genuinely complex, but by finding the framework that finally makes the complexity legible. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper into the 7 archetypes. Until next time, find your power, know your myth,